In a remote military base tucked deep in the Nevada desert, war hero Captain Logan Barrett is abruptly discharged under suspicious orders. His K-9 partner Brannick is marked for relocation. But what unfolds is far more sinister. Separated by force, both man and dog must navigate a landscape of betrayal, secrets, and buried military experiments. As Logan uncovers the truth behind Project Polaris, an unauthorized neurological manipulation program, he finds Brannick wounded, altered, but unbroken. Together with an ex-military analyst and a new wave of discarded soldiers, they begin to expose the lies. But in a world that silences its mistakes, how far will they go to protect what remains? And will loyalty be enough to survive what's coming next? Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. The silence of Fort Copperstone was a deception, a brittle calm stretched thin over secrets buried deep, the kind of silence that didn't come from peace, but from too many voices being silenced. Out there in the middle of the Nevada desert, under the sun's unforgiving blaze, Captain Logan Barrett was finishing what was supposed to be his last week on active duty. After 24 years in the service, 3 wars, and countless missions swallowed by redacted reports, he should have felt relieved. Instead, something gnawed at him like rust behind steel. His boots echoed through the concrete halls of the operations wing, too empty now, like the place had started hollowing out from the inside. A few offices that used to hum with strategy. Briefings and personnel rotations were now locked up tight. Lights off, files gone. The flags still hung, but they didn't seem to wave anymore. They drooped like they knew something was ending. Logan paused at the South Corridor junction, where Brannick trotted beside him with practiced precision. The Belgian Malinois moved like he was still patrolling a combat zone. His ears were up, his body tense, and when they passed the old logistics wing, the dog gave a low, unsettling growl. "That used to be your nap spot," Logan murmured, patting Brannick's flank. But the dog didn't relax. He stared at the closed door like it had betrayed them. Logan turned, too. And that's when he noticed something, a faint echo, a drawer slamming somewhere deeper in the compound. Too far off for comfort, he waited. Nothing followed, just that silence again. The kind that gets under your skin. Later that afternoon, he crossed the lot to the kennels where Brannick was supposed to be decommissioned alongside him. The sergeant at the desk, Miller, gave him a stiff nod, but wouldn't meet his eyes. Paperwork had been changed, apparently. Brannick was scheduled for transfer, not adoption, not retirement, just relocation due to budget reallocations. Words that meant nothing. Words that made Logan's throat tighten. "You got a problem with it? Take it up the chain," Miller muttered without lifting his head. "There is no chain left," Logan replied and turned back toward the sun. Back in the barracks, Logan stared at the mirror over the sink, brushing a hand over his graying stubble. The weight of years was written in the lines around his eyes, but today they seemed darker. He should have been packing. He should have been heading to his cabin outside Elko, where the pine trees still whispered the kind of truth you don't find in military briefings. Instead, he found himself rechecking his sidearm, not out of habit, out of instinct. At sundown, he took Brannick out one more time, walking the perimeter like they used to do before deployments. The sun dipped low behind the ridge, dragging long shadows across the yard. Brannick kept stopping, watching empty corners, his tail low, stiff. Twice he paused and growled softly at a passing Humvee. No one inside, engine cold. And then there were the files. He saw them with his own eyes. 2 men from internal ops carrying shredded documents out back to the incinerator. One saw Logan watching and nodded once, curtly, too curt. No shame, just procedure. He said nothing, just walked away, Brannick close to his side. But Logan's mind didn't quiet down. Not this time. That night, Logan sat alone in the office's lounge. The room was darker than usual. He didn't turn the lights on, didn't need to. Logan sat by the fire with Brannick at his side. Diana visited from town, carrying a box of papers and a tired smile. "The Smithsonian wants the files," she said. "The original drive. They're planning an exhibit, the Dogs of Service." "Want to call it the Brannick Archives?" Logan shook his head slowly. "Not about him," she smiled. "No, it's about all of them." They sat in silence for a long time. As the sun dropped, painting the sky in amber and rust, a train of motorcycles passed along the distant road. Veterans riding in formation. Some wore patches from the Corps, others bore nothing at all. But they saluted as they passed the gate. Inside the cabin, Logan stood once more. Brannick rose beside him, stiff but steady. "You ready, old friend?" Logan asked. Brannick looked up, ears flicking, and in the final light of the day they walked, once more toward the field, toward the other dogs waiting. No orders, no commands, just purpose, because long after the programs had ended, long after the files had been archived and the medals tucked away, there remained one enduring truth. Some memories couldn't be erased, and some legacies couldn't be silenced. They simply lived on, already dressed for travel. "Another intake hit the wire this morning," she said. 3 dogs recovered from a private contractor storage facility outside Phoenix. We've got coordinates. We've got eyes." Logan looked to Cole. "You want in? I didn't come here to watch." That same day, Cole was assigned to the Northern Recovery Sweep, an old trail through mining territory where Polaris had once tested isolated field trials. The dogs they recovered there didn't bark, some wouldn't eat, but they recognized their own. Brannick traveled with the team that day, not as a tracker, but as a symbol. Wherever he walked, the others followed. By week's end, there were 9 new members in the Corps, all of them former handlers, all of them carrying a piece of what had been broken. They operated out of a makeshift HQ in the far wing of the K9 Reserve, bunking between chain-link kennels and repurposed barracks. A hand-painted sign hung above the door. They never stopped serving. Neither will we. They weren't soldiers anymore, but they were something else. Word spread. Requests came in from other towns, abandoned dogs, forgotten vets, families who still had questions. Logan kept a map with pins stuck into each. Recovered site, red for Polaris-related, blue for unrelated but connected, and gold for those still waiting. There were too many gold pins. Brannick led training exercises now. He moved slower than he once had, but when he barked, they listened. One handler, a former Marine named Hagen, watched him work and whispered, "He doesn't act like a dog. He acts like command." Logan heard it and didn't correct him. At night, the Corps sat around a fire pit out behind the barracks. They told stories, some painful, some hollow, some filled with laughter that felt like it didn't belong to them anymore. When asked how it all started, Logan only ever said one thing: a promise. Brannick would lie behind him, listening, because he still remembered the one that was made, and the one they were keeping. Years passed quietly. The world moved on, as it always did. Headlines faded. New crises took their place. But in small towns and quiet corners of America, whispers still carried the name Brannick, not as a weapon, not as an experiment, but as a memory of something that refused to break. At the edge of the K9 Reserve, a statue stood under the oaks, bronze, life-sized, a dog sitting alert, head high, eyes fixed on an unseen horizon. There was no plaque listing dates or battles, just a single line carved in the stone base, he remembered. Visitors came from all over, veterans, families, school groups. Some left flowers, others brought dog tags, photos, or notes. Many simply stood in silence. Inside the reserve, the Sentinel Corps still operated, smaller now, more refined. Their missions had shifted from rescues to outreach, training, education. They worked with law enforcement, service dog programs, and even Congress, helping to write new standards for military animal care. But at its core, the Corps remained a promise kept. Logan no longer ran operations. His body had grown stiffer, his step slower, but his mind stayed sharp. He spent mornings on the porch of a small cabin near the west tree line, overlooking the fields where the dogs trained. The chair creaked when he shifted. The mug in his hands never changed. Same chipped enamel, same black coffee. Brannick lay at his feet, older now. His muzzle had greyed. His eyes had softened, but the spark never left. He didn't chase anymore. He led. A younger shepherd, one of the new intakes, curled beside him like an apprentice, watching his every move. They had become legends, quiet ones. One afternoon, a car pulled up the gravel path. A family stepped out. A woman in her 40s, a boy clutching a photo. Logan met them at the gate. "You're the one," she said softly, "from the video." "The hearings." He nodded once. The boy stepped forward and showed the picture. It was his father, a former handler. His dog had vanished under Polaris. "They said he died in training," the boy whispered. "But my dad never believed that. He said the dog wouldn't leave him." Logan took the photo, studied it. He knew that face. The records had been wrong. That dog had made it, recovered, rehomed. Logan remembered the scar behind the ear, the twitch in the back leg. "Your father was right," he said. "He didn't leave." The boy smiled. It was enough. That evening, a custom piece, brushed bronze in the shape of a shield, with a paw print etched into the center and a single word engraved beneath: loyalty. There was no ribbon, just a metal clasp on the back. Logan held it in his hand and turned it over once. Before kneeling beside Brannick, "You won't ever see your name on a wall," he said, voice low. "You won't be saluted. No folded flag, no taps." Brannick watched him with those deep, still eyes. "But I saw what you did, and I'll remember." He pinned the medal to the harness they had taken off and kept since the injury. It hung near the collar, quiet and small, not meant to stand out but to last. Diana stepped back. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Later that evening, a package arrived by courier. No return address, no signature. Just a padded envelope and a single handwritten note inside. "He saved me once, too." The contents: a military patch, torn, faded and charred at the edges, Special Operations Command. Logan turned it over. On the back, written in marker, classified: Brannick K9, Echo Group. The stories were beginning to surface: emails, photos, journal entries, old vets reaching out, some broken, others numb, all of them carrying pieces of a puzzle they hadn't known existed. The dogs they remembered, the ones that vanished, the ones that stopped responding to commands, the ones that died without explanation, were no longer just ghosts. They had names, they had stories, and they had Brannick. Logan and Diana started, compiling them, not for prosecution, not for scandal, for memory. A wall went up in the reserve, not a wall to divide, but to honor. On it, the names of dogs confirmed as part of Polaris, engraved on steel plates one by one. Brannick's name sat at the top, not as a symbol of tragedy, but of survival. Visitors came and stood before it in silence. Some saluted, some cried, some brought photos and left them tucked between the plates. One child left a toy ball with a note: "He did a good job." On one quiet morning, a school bus pulled up. Dozens of children stepped out, led by teachers whispering instructions. They approached the wall, wide-eyed, uncertain. Logan watched from a distance. A young girl stepped forward, traced the paw print on Brannick's shield, and turned to her. "Class, can I read my report now?" The teacher nodded. The girl unfolded a piece of paper and began to read. "This is the story of a dog who wasn't just brave, but smart. They tried to change him, but he remembered who he was. His name was Brannick, and he was a soldier." The kids clapped quietly. Logan didn't move. He just watched Brannick lying in the grass nearby, his head resting on the earth, one ear still. Twitching at the sound of children's voices, he was listening, because he always had. The knock came just after dawn. Logan opened the door without his rifle, the quiet confidence of a man who already knew who stood on the other side. The young man looked barely 30. His haircut was too sharp, his boots too clean, but his eyes carried something familiar: disillusion. masked by discipline. "Name's Cole Avery," he said. "I was told you might be the one to talk to." Logan stepped aside and let him in. Brannick lifted his head from the hearth and studied the stranger in silence. Cole didn't flinch, but he didn't step closer either. "That him?" Logan nodded. "I heard what he did. What you both did." Cole unzipped his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. He set it on the table without a word. Logan opened it. A discharge notice. Dishonorable. The words excessive force and insubordination stamped in thick red across the page. "What happened?" Cole exhaled. "My K9 partner was flagged for deactivation. They said he was unstable after returning from deployment. I said they were wrong. They said if I didn't step aside, I'd join him." "So you didn't step aside?" "No, sir, I didn't." Logan looked up. "Where's your dog now?" "Gone. Took him before I got back to the base. Never saw him again." The silence that followed was heavy. Logan poured 2 cups of coffee and handed one over. "We're building something," he said. "Quiet for now, but it's growing." Cole. It took the cup, his hands steady. "The Sentinel Corps," Logan continued. "Voluntary veteran run. We track dogs marked for disposal, find the ones still out there, and bring them home." Cole blinked. "That real?" "As real as it needs to be." Diana appeared from the back room. Weathered siding, sagging roof, a battered sign out front that read, "Fort Harmony K9 Reserve." It had once been a training site for explosive detection dogs. When funding vanished, so did the personnel. What remained was a half-forgotten field and a few iron kennels. Logan had helped reopen it. Inside there were others. Dogs, not unlike Brannick, lay in pens or padded corners, some alert, others withdrawn. Not all bore the scars of Polaris, but many had their own stories. Quiet removals, unexplained behavior. Flags, sudden reassignments. One by one, their records had surfaced in the wake of the leak. Not every survivor had a handler waiting for them. Some had been listed as euthanized, others had simply disappeared from databases, but they were still here. Logan walked the line slowly, Brannick at his side. The dogs didn't bark when they passed. They watched, some with interest, some with confusion, others with recognition. One, a sable-colored German shepherd with one eye, stood slowly and limped toward the gate. He sniffed the air once, then lay down again, breathing easier. Diana stepped out from the office, a clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the newly arrived intake files. Her sleeves were rolled up, a smear of dust across her arm, exhaustion behind her glasses, but she smiled when she saw them. 6 more today, she said. 2 from Kansas, 1 from a private contractor in Tennessee, 3 from a defunded research unit near Quantico. Any more Polaris? 2 flagged, same scar, same chip removal. 1 still won't let anyone near him. Logan looked toward the pen she pointed at. A black Malinois, smaller than Brannick, hunched in the corner, eyes flicking back and forth like they expected punishment. The lights above him were dim. Deliberately, the others had already learned that bright, sharp light made some of them panic. "He'll come around," Logan said. "They always do, when they know they're not going back." Brannick walked to the edge of the pen and sat quietly, watching the other dog. No growl, no sound, just presence. The young Malinois lifted his head. The change was small, a shift, but Logan saw it. They spent hours each day walking the perimeter, not for security, but for rhythm. Brannick led them. The others followed. One by one, the strays found their place. Some would never leave. Others might find homes with handlers who came looking, former soldiers, men and women who'd lost more than a uniform could carry. Word had spread, not just about Polaris, but about the dogs, about the loyalty that survived what men had tried to destroy. A few veterans began sending letters. "He saved my life in Fallujah. Please let me know if he's still alive." They told me she was reclassified. I didn't ask questions then. I wish I had. Some of the dogs responded the moment their former handlers stepped into view. A twitch, a whine, a tail moving for the first time in months. Reunion after reunion, played out in silence and tears. Logan stayed back for most of them. He wasn't doing it for recognition. He wasn't doing it for revenge. He was doing it for Brannick and the others who never came back. At night, Logan sat with a journal in his lap, the pages filled with names, dates, coordinates, things that didn't belong to any one dog, but to all of them. A ledger not of crimes, but of costs. Brannick lay beside the fire, watching the flames. Every so often, he'd glance at the front gate, ears flicking, waiting, like he still had a job to do. The spring sun cast a gentle gold across the rolling hills, brushing through the tall grass like fingers over an old hymn. The reserve had grown, quieter over the last few days. Not from lack of activity, but from peace finally beginning to take root. For the first time in months, Logan stood still beneath the shade of an oak tree, watching Brannick ease down into the grass with a slow, deliberate motion. His limp was nearly gone now. Only a slight hesitation in his back leg, the way an old soldier favored a scar in winter. Diana approached from the old ranger's office, carrying a box wrapped in a weathered American flag. Her boots were caked in dirt, hair tied back, eyes distant. "I found it," she said, "in a drawer at the bottom of a shipping crate in a decommissioned base. No ceremony, no paperwork, just sitting there like it never mattered." Logan opened. The box slowly inside was a small medal, not official, not listed in any registry. A thin line of stitches running up his flank, one ear nicked at the edge. The dog still limped, but he moved with purpose, as if he knew the world hadn't finished needing him yet. Logan ran a hand through the dog's fur one evening and said, "They didn't break us." Brannick lifted his head. No bark, no growl, just that look, like he knew exactly what those words meant. By the end of the week, the hearings began. Official, televised, and under oath. The Capitol's marble corridors echoed with footsteps of men and women who had once turned a blind eye. Now they had no choice but to face the storm. The footage had stirred something they couldn't spin away. It wasn't just about Brannick. It was about everything Polaris touched. Soldiers used as test subjects, memories altered, loyalty engineered. Inside the committee chamber, Logan sat straight-backed behind a plain oak table, his hands folded. In front of him, a white envelope resting on the surface. He wore no uniform, just a dark jacket, the weight of his story and the lines on his face. Cameras flashed, murmurs buzzed behind him, but he didn't flinch. His eyes were locked ahead. A senator cleared her throat. "Captain Barrett, you claim the Department of Defense initiated unauthorized testing on military canines and human operatives without informed consent." Logan didn't blink. "Yes? And you have proof?" He opened the envelope and slid the contents forward. Documents, photos, reports signed with names now retired or buried, a printed screenshot of the video, a list of K9 units that had vanished from logs. "And this dog?" another senator asked, gesturing toward the screen where Brannick's image appeared. "He's one of the test subjects?" Logan's jaw tightened. "He's my partner. And yes, he was one of the ones they tried to break." Gasps rippled through the room as Brannick's medical report was read aloud. The surgical scar, the attempted behavioral override, the orders, marked terminative compromised. A third senator, older, quiet until now, leaned forward. "What do you want from us, Captain?" Logan looked at him, voice low but clear. "I want accountability for every dog they discarded, for every soldier they rewired, for every file they tried to burn." The room was still. Later, during a break, Diana stood at the Capitol steps, holding a printout of the leaked files. Reporters swarmed. She held it up like a flag. "They made science out of silence," she said. "We won't let them hide anymore." That night, news networks didn't cover politics. They covered Polaris. Every channel, every screen. They played Brannick's video. They played Logan's testimony. They showed photos of other dogs marked as unstable who had vanished without record. Families of handlers started calling in, some with stories, others just with tears. Even the president commented. "If true," he said, "this represents a failure of values we claim to defend." But for Logan, none of it mattered as much as what came next. A photo was projected during the third hearing. Brannick, standing beside Logan at the edge of the cabin, stitched but proud. A senator asked for its context. "That was the day he stood his ground after being shot," Logan said. "He held a line I couldn't, not because he was ordered to, but because he remembered who he was." Across the country, people watched. And something shifted. The military couldn't deny it anymore. The Pentagon announced an internal review. Dozens of names were subpoenaed. Labs were shuttered overnight. One general resigned mid-session. Another invoked the fifth. But the image that stayed, burned into the public consciousness, wasn't from the courtroom. It came from a video Diana released on the final day of testimony. Brannick, lying beside Logan's boots at the cabin, wind moving gently through his fur, his head lifting slightly as Logan whispered something only the dog could hear. The audio was faint, but the words were clear. "They tried to erase you," he said, "and you stayed anyway." Winter eased its grip on the hills as spring pushed quietly through the frost. Logan walked a dirt path carved along the side of a quiet ridge, boots crunching against soft gravel. Brannick limped beside him, still favoring the side where the bullet had passed clean through, but stronger than he'd been in weeks. He no longer stumbled, no longer winced. The scars had healed, most of them. At the bottom of the hill, an old shelter came into view. Head high, shoulders squared. Blood leaked down his flank, but he didn't care. Diana swallowed hard. "He's not leaving you." Logan looked into those eyes one last time, saw the same thing he'd seen on a dozen battlefields, resolve that couldn't be taught, only earned. He placed the drive in Diana's pack. "Go now." She nodded once and vanished over the edge of the bridge, sliding down the embankment toward the spillway. Logan turned back toward the figures approaching. From the tree line, he raised his rifle. Brannick growled low, body coiled like a spring. The first shot came from the right. Logan returned fire, ducked, rolled. Brannick launched ahead, slamming into the lead attacker. The fight was chaos, snow, blood, bullets, and teeth. Two men went down hard. The others hesitated. Then Brannick yelped, a sharp, sudden cry. Logan turned, saw the dog hit the ground, a bullet tearing through his side. He didn't think, just emptied his clip, forcing the last two shooters back into the trees. Silence followed, then retreat. He dropped beside Brannick, hands shaking, pressing against the wound. Blood poured fast. "Stay with me," Logan whispered. "You stay." "With me?" Brannick's breath came in short, hard bursts. His body trembled, but his eyes stayed on Logan, still loyal, still here. "You did good," Logan said. "You did so damn good." Brannick's head lowered slowly onto his paw. His breathing eased. The snow kept falling. The video leaked online at 3:17 a.m. A clip no longer than 90 seconds. Grainy, no audio, just a dark corridor, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, a dog in restraints, blood beneath him, and a logo stamped in the corner of the frame. Project Polaris. It spread faster than anyone could stop it. Within hours, it was reposted to forums, mirrored on whistleblower sites, and shared by veterans groups from coast to coast. By sunrise, hashtags were trending: military abuse, secret experiments, canine betrayal. The public didn't need the whole truth. They only needed to see enough to feel the weight of it. That video became more than proof. It became a wound. In a quiet motel room 2 states away, Diana Hoyt watched it unfold from the edge of a stiff mattress. The hard drive sat in her lap, backed up and encrypted 10 ways. She'd sent copies to 5 journalists she trusted, 2 international watchdogs, and a senator who'd once blown the whistle on a defense contractor. Each had confirmed receipt. The story couldn't be buried now. Her burner phone rang. Logan's voice came through, quiet and strained. "How far did it get?" "Everywhere," she said. "It's wildfire." There was a pause on the line. "Brannick." She hesitated, then answered. "He's stable. The vet I found didn't ask questions. She said it'll be a long recovery, but he's strong. They had to remove the slug, stitch him from the inside out. He'll walk again." Logan exhaled. It was the first relief she'd heard in his voice since the ambush. "He stayed on that bridge even after you blacked out," she said. "Laid across your body until help came. He always did know how to hold a line." At noon, the Department of Defense issued a statement. They denied the legitimacy of the footage, claimed it was fabricated, taken out of context, a misinterpretation of archived research. But by then, it was too late. Independent labs had already verified metadata. Forensics proved the footage was untouched. Congressional subcommittees called emergency sessions. Retired generals appeared on camera, shaking their heads. "If this is real," one said, "it's not just unethical, it's treasonous." Veterans across the country began to post their own stories. Dogs lost, units disbanded without reason, training protocols changed with no explanation. Pieces began to click. A puzzle no one had known existed was assembling in plain sight. The Pentagon went dark for 36 hours. When they resurfaced, they spoke with lawyers present. Brannick's image, bleeding, bound, became a symbol, not of war, not of science, of betrayal. A group of K9 veterans formed a coalition. Their motto was simple: "We remember the ones who couldn't speak." Logan didn't watch the news. He stayed in a cabin further north, miles from any town, off any grid. He spent his mornings walking the tree lines with a rifle slung over his shoulder and his nights writing down what he remembered. The names, the labs, the orders. Sometimes he'd pause to watch Brannick sleeping by the fire. A man alone, hands raised. He walked closer, slow and deliberate. Logan kept his rifle trained on him. The man stopped 30 feet away and said, "I'm not here to fight." "Then you're in the wrong place. I used to work with Barrett. Camp Ironback, winter rotation. You remember me?" Logan didn't lower his weapon. "You're out of time. Start talking." The man swallowed. "They've sent a kill team, full black. Airlift in 6 hours. You're marked for removal. They know the leak went viral and they can't patch it." Diana stood. "How do we know you're not bait?" The man reached into his coat slowly and tossed something toward them. Logan caught it. A key fob. Military. Issue. On it coordinates, a warehouse, Washington, D.C. What is this? Proof. All of it. Originals. The files on your drive were copies. This is the hub. The last archive. Why give it to me? Because I served under Barrett and I saw what Polaris did to men I respected. He backed away. "I can't stay, but now you know where to hit them." He disappeared into the tree. Line. Silence returned. Logan stepped back inside. Diana was already pulling up maps, calculating routes. "If we go east now, stick to the old lines, we can reach the pass by midday tomorrow." He nodded. "Get ready." Brannick walked to the door and looked out into the dark. Logan stood beside him. "They want to erase you," he said. "Erase us both." Brannick didn't move. "But I don't take orders anymore." The snow came heavier as they pushed east. By the time Logan, Diana, and Brannick reached the ridge above Black Hollow Dam, the sky had darkened to a bruised gray, the air sharp enough to burn lungs. Wind sliced across the pass, howling through the trees like a warning. Logan led the way, scanning the horizon with every step. Diana followed close behind, her backpack cinched tight, the hard drive tucked against her spine. Brannick moved with his head low, paw prints filling with snow almost as fast as he laid them. They were 2 miles from the final checkpoint when Logan heard the rotor blades. Low. Fast. Not civilian. He turned and grabbed Diana's shoulder. "Run!" She didn't ask. She just moved. Brannick broke into a sprint beside her, but Logan could see the dog's strength fading, each bound shorter than the last, his limp worse. They reached the top of the ridge just as the first helicopter crested the tree line behind them. A black shape, no markings, no lights. Then came the flash of a muzzle. Gunfire tore through the trees. Bark exploded in splinters. Logan shoved Diana forward, yelling, "Down the slope, go!" She slipped, scrambled, and dropped behind a boulder. Logan took position on the crest, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the canopy. Brannick didn't stop. charged toward the sound, barking with a fury that didn't belong to a creature that wounded. It was war-born. It was vengeance. He dove through the underbrush just as two figures emerged from the trees in full gear, silenced carbines raised, visors glowing. Brannick hit the first man square in the chest. Teeth found a neck. Blood sprayed. The second turned to fire, but Logan's shot hit him clean in the side. More boots approached. "We have to go," Diana shouted. Logan grabbed Brannick by the harness and pulled him back. The dog's body was slick with blood, both his own and someone else's. He whined but didn't stop moving. Diana led them across the service bridge, a narrow concrete platform stretching over the freezing dam waters. Wind whipped across it, nearly tearing them from their feet. Halfway across, Logan saw the shadows on the far side. They were waiting. 4 of them. He counted the outlines, all armed, all ready. "We're boxed in," Diana said, her voice shaking. Logan scanned the structure. The service ladder to the control deck, still intact. The old spillway access door below. Probably rusted shut, but maybe not. "Give me the drive," he said. Diana hesitated. "No, we stay together. Not this time." He looked at her. "I'll draw them. You go under the bridge, through the access. If it opens, you're in the clear. Head down to the valley road. Follow it east. Someone will meet you." She stared at him, eyes filled with disbelief. "Don't make me ask again," he said. She slid the drive into his hand. It was cold. Brannick stepped forward, wobbled, then stood at Logan's side. "No," Logan said, kneeling. "You go with her." But Brannick didn't move. He planted himself beside Logan. The explosion hit the rear tires first. A concussive boom lifted from beneath the snowpack. The vehicle slammed sideways, skidded into a tree, and stopped hard. Logan was already moving, dragging Diana from the passenger side as Brannick launched. Out the rear window with a snarl, figures emerged from the woods, silent, coordinated, fast. 6 of them, black masks, infrared visors, not local, not amateurs. Logan fired 2 quick bursts, dropped 1, rolled into the tree line and yelled, "Flank west!" Diana scrambled behind a fallen log, yanking her pistol free. She'd trained for this in another life, but that life didn't prepare her for what came next. One of the masked men moved too fast, far too precise. He closed in on her position, rifle raised. Then Brannick was on him. The dog struck like lightning, low and hard, teeth into the wrist. A scream cut through the trees, followed by the sound of bones breaking. Logan grabbed Diana's arm, pulled her into cover, and handed her an extra clip. "Stay with me." They moved together, weaving through trees, the air alive with gunfire and the bitter sting of smoke grenades. Logan counted their pursuers. Still 5 left. These weren't meant to kill. They were meant to extract. He wasn't going to let them succeed. They lured 2 into a bottleneck between boulders, then dropped them with a flashbang and 2 silent rounds. Brannick circled wide, herding the last man back toward the jeep. The trap worked. 1 minute later, the man's body lay still, twitching in the snow. The forest was silent again. Diana leaned against a tree, shaking. "They were trying to take me alive." Logan nodded. "You're the leak." "Me? You touched the files. You ran the upload. You're proof." She looked down, face pale. "What now?" Logan checked Brannick's wounds. "Shallow cuts, but deep bruises. We disappear, regroup, find out how far they're willing to go." As he spoke, he lifted a small object from the snow, their enemy's comm unit. He pressed play, static, then a voice. Objective compromised. "Subject Brannick remains high value. Terminate if extraction fails. Barrett is expendable." Logan crushed the device in his fist and looked out over the forest. They were never going to stop. The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a gutted fire lookout, built in the 1940s and long since forgotten by the forestry department. Perched atop a granite bluff, it had no road, no utilities, and no neighbors. The only way in was a 2-mile hike through uneven terrain, and that was exactly why Logan chose it. He helped Diana up the final stretch, her face slick with sweat despite the cold. Brannick followed behind, slower now, his limp more pronounced. They reached the structure just as the last light dipped behind the pines, the sky bleeding orange into deep violet. Logan opened the rusted door and stepped inside, sweeping the corners with his rifle. It was empty, still safe. The inside smelled like dust and pine tar. A single cot, a steel stove, and a table bolted to the floor. He dropped his gear and pulled. The heavy radio case from his pack. Brannick circled once, then lay down at the threshold, watching the woods. Diana slid the uplink bag onto the table. "We're off-grid here, really off, that's the point." She ran her hands through her hair and sat heavily. They won't stop. Not after this. No, they won't. Logan turned on the field radio. Static filled the room. He adjusted frequencies, one notch at a time, until he reached a signal buried beneath noise, encrypted military traffic. He listened, then he heard it, a voice, female, controlled. "Command has issued final status directive. Subject Brannick, terminate with prejudice. Any protection equals hostile allegiance. Clearance Polaris red confirmed." Logan shut the radio. "Off." His jaw clenched. "That was an order," Diana said quietly. "They gave up the lie. They're not protecting secrets anymore. They're hunting threats." Diana looked at Brannick, whose head had lifted, ears perked, body tense again. "He heard it," she whispered. Logan crouched next to the dog. "You knew before I did, didn't you? You felt it." Brannick didn't blink. He leaned his head against Logan's shoulder, just for a moment. Then there was movement outside. Logan was on his feet in an instant. He yanked Diana down and took position by the door. Brannick stood again, growling, but no gunfire came, no flashbangs, just a silhouette in the distance. He said, not turning from the trees. Diana didn't look up. "I know, they've already tried twice to trace the signal." "How long?" 5 more minutes, maybe less. The wind outside shifted. Branches whispered. Brannick's head tilted slightly. Logan scanned the tree line. Nothing moved. Not yet. Then a sharp click from Diana's laptop. "Upload starting." She shifted her focus to the uplink, eyes scanning the scrolling text. "They're jamming half the frequency," she said. "But I'm still pushing packets through." Logan tensed. "They'll come now." He checked the doorway, then the windows, calculated angles of fire, lines of retreat. He could hold them off for a while, long enough for the data to escape. Brannick stood, growling, headlights cut through the forest, low beams, silent engines. Then shadows, figures moving between the trees, rifles in hand, movements too coordinated for local law. "Black Ops," Logan muttered. "Not military, contracted." Diana unplugged the uplink, slid it into her pack. "They'll destroy the relay. If they find it, then we don't let them find it." Logan moved to the center of the church, pulled loose 2 floorboards they'd prepared earlier. He dropped the uplink inside, buried it with insulation, then slid the boards back into place. Outside, boots crunched in the snow. Brannick let out a low, vibrating growl. Logan chambered around. The first flashbang hit the far wall of the church, rattling the windows and sending a shockwave through the wood. Brannick didn't flinch. He bolted toward the source, disappearing through a side window before Logan could stop him. Gunfire erupted, then screams, then silence. Logan ducked low, pulled Diana down beside the pews. They waited. Another figure entered, careful, slow. Logan let him step deeper before firing a clean round through the shoulder. The man dropped. "No kill, just warning." Brannick returned, blood on his muzzle. Limping but alive. 3 more flashbangs lit the woods, but none came closer. The team had pulled. Back. Diana looked at her laptop. "Signal's back. They're shifting resources. They're trying to break the mirror servers now." "How long until it finishes?" "It's already done." Logan lowered his weapon. Outside, tires screeched as the vans retreated down the mountain. A road, too late. The story was gone. The data had scattered. Polaris was no longer a secret, but Logan knew what came next. They wouldn't retreat. They'd regroup. He knelt beside Brannick and whispered, "We just drew first blood." And somewhere, in a black site with no name, someone else was whispering the same thing. Snow fell in slow, heavy flakes, each one dissolving the heat that still lingered from the firefight. The church was quiet again, the silence more uneasy. Now, wounded, Logan paced the perimeter, boots crunching in the frozen grass as he swept the tree line with his scope. Brannick sat near the broken front pew, watching the door. His front right paw trembled slightly. He hadn't rested since the clash. Neither had Logan. Diana was beneath the altar, securing the uplink case in a lead-lined bag. Her face was pale, skin tight with tension. She had tried to keep her voice calm all morning, but Logan could hear the crack in it when she spoke. She knew what they had done. The upload went through. The files had spread, backups across 3 continents. Polaris was public now, but the men behind Polaris didn't care about headlines. They cared about consequences, and they were coming. Logan knelt by the fire, checking the sat phone he hadn't used in months. He pulled a weathered notepad from his coat pocket and scrolled through the numbers. One in particular stood out. He dialed it. A moment passed, static. Then a voice, gruff, cautious. "Barrett?" Logan didn't explain. "I need a route east. Safe house fallback, one with teeth." There was a pause. Then, "I know a place, but you'll need a distraction to get there." Logan ended the call without a goodbye. He turned to Diana. "We're leaving in 1 hour." She didn't argue. She zipped the bag, slung it over her shoulder and followed him outside. Brannick limped behind, silent, scanning the horizon. His hackles stayed up, even as they packed the last of their gear and loaded into the old Forest Ranger's Jeep that Logan had hotwired 2 days earlier. The engine turned over reluctantly, coughing once before it held. They were 10 minutes down the dirt road when the ambush triggered. Every motion was reserved now, as if the world had narrowed to just survival and the truth. Logan stared at the drive. It was unlike the others he'd handled in the past. Sleek, encrypted, meant for transport, not storage. It was designed for delivery, for sharing among the inner circles of those who never wanted records left behind. People who erased history and rewrote it with better headlines. He knew he couldn't decrypt it alone. So he packed up what little they had, hoisted Brannick's, harnessed gently, and headed south. They didn't take roads, just a trail through the forest, winding and steep. It took them 2 days to reach the edge of a town that barely registered on the map. Hollister's Bluff, small, quiet, not too curious, just the way he remembered it. Logan walked into the town diner just after sunrise, the sky still painted, with strips of orange and purple. He hadn't changed his clothes in 4 days. The people inside noticed. Some turned their eyes away. Others just watched, unsure. But one woman at the back didn't flinch. Diana Hoyt. She used to work intelligence analysis at Fort Meade before leaving it all behind. 10 years in uniform, another 5 as a contractor. Now she ran a blog disguised as political commentary, but dug deeper into classified leaks than most journalists dared. Her pieces had been cited by congressional hearings more than once. Her enemies included people whose names never appeared in newspapers. Logan sat across from her without asking. He slid the drive onto the table between them. Her eyes didn't blink. "You look like hell," she said. "You should see the other guy." Brannick settled under the table, his body half hidden in the dim light. But his eyes never left Diana. "You know what that is?" Logan asked. She nodded once, already lifting her bag and pulling out a laptop wrapped in thermal shielding. "Where'd you get it?" "Underground. Polaris Project. They called it Beta Channel. Someone buried it. Someone else wanted. It burned." She didn't ask if he had permission, didn't need to. Instead, she pulled out a second cable, attached the drive, and began a quiet series of keystrokes. The screen flickered, lines of code, then files, dozens, hundreds, videos. "Reports, neural maps, test protocols," she read in silence. Her fingers froze on the trackpad. Then her eyes met Logan's. "They weren't just enhancing K9 behavior," she said, voice low. "They were reprogramming memory, not just in dogs. They tested on humans, field soldiers, Tier 1 operatives." Logan's throat tightened. "They used Brannick," she nodded. "They used both of you." He didn't speak, just leaned back and let the silence fall again. Diana didn't look away from the screen. "This is enough to make people disappear," she said, "permanently. That's why I brought it to you." She hesitated. "You want to go public?" "I want it out of their hands." She stared at the files again. Then she began copying. An hour later, she stood and slid the drive into a sealed packet. "I'll send it through 3 ghost servers, one VPN in Serbia, another in Iceland. From there it hits a black drop, then the archives. By the time anyone traces it, it'll be a headline." Logan nodded. "Make it loud." She studied him again, this time with something close to fear. "Not of him, but for him. They'll come for you." He looked down at Brannick, who had dozed off under the table, chest rising and falling softly. They already did. The church had long since been abandoned. Its steeple leaned slightly to the left, paint peeling in strips, windows broken in jagged patterns that caught the moonlight like fractured glass. Logan chose it because no one would think to look here, not anymore. It sat on the edge of an old mining road, half swallowed by time, its silence a perfect shroud. Diana worked under the beam of a battery lamp, her fingers steady over the keyboard as she finalized the data transfer. Her laptop hummed beside her, connected to a satellite uplink the size of a small cooler. It blinked green. The drive's contents were being sent through encrypted channels, fragmented and scattered, set to reassemble on the other side. If they made it. Logan stood by the door, rifle cradled in his arms, eyes fixed on the forest line. Brannick sat beside him, ears up, posture alert. He hadn't slept since they'd left town. He wouldn't. Not until the work was done. They weren't alone. Logan could feel it. They're watching. No noise, just a feeling, the kind you learn to trust after decades of being hunted. Brannick didn't relax. His eyes stayed fixed on the tree line for the rest of the morning. Logan knew what that meant. They were close, and they weren't done with either of them yet. By the 3rd day in the ranger station, the cold had settled into Logan's bones, like it planned to stay. Brannick had begun to eat again, slowly, in careful bites. His breathing was stronger. The wounds, though still raw, had stopped bleeding. Logan changed the dressings twice a day, grateful for the dog's trust, even when the pain made him shudder. But it wasn't the healing that troubled Logan. It was what came with it. Each time he looked into Brannick's eyes, he saw something different now. Not fear, not the sharp discipline of a trained soldier. It was confusion, mistrust. The kind of look you give when the world rearranges itself into something unrecognizable, and the things you once believed in stop meaning anything. Whatever they'd done to Brannick inside that bunker had changed him. And not just physically. Logan sat at the table in the half-lit corner of the ranger station, the hard drive on the surface in front of him. It was smaller than a pack of cigarettes, marked only with a faded stamp, Polaris, level red. He'd seen red level clearances before. Not many people had. Most were buried under classified programs that barely existed even on paper. Anything marked red wasn't just dangerous, it was volatile. He cracked it open with a pocket tool and a light. Touch! No password screen, no encryption prompt. Just a blinking cursor on a black background and a list of files labeled in sterile code. Phase 1, obedience trials. Phase 2, synaptic reprogramming. Phase 3, memory retention in combat-compromised canines. Logan clicked on 1A. Video loaded. Brannick, muzzled, restrained, surrounded by men in lab coats. A voice off-camera asked questions. The dog's eyes followed, pupils dilated. A soft hum played in the background, mechanical and pulsing. Subject 9 responds to tones with immediate orientation. Associative memory confirmed. The clip cut to a second video. Brannick again, this time in a room with flashing lights. Gunfire. Sounds and the scent markers of enemy uniforms. He barked, then froze, as if trying to fight himself. He was confused, torn. "He's learning beyond the scope of the program," a new voice said. "If he keeps adapting, we'll lose control." The third video was shorter, a black SUV, 2 handlers with rifles. "Terminate the subject if deviation persists." Logan stopped watching. He stared at the drive. So that was it. They hadn't just tried to enhance Brannick. They had tried to rewrite him. But something had gone wrong. Brannick had remembered. He backed up the files to his own drive and burned the rest to ash in the station's small fireplace. He didn't trust satellites anymore. Someone had deleted the footage before. They'd try again. This time, there wouldn't be anything left to find. That evening, he noticed Brannick watching him differently. The dog came to him, slow and steady, and laid his head in Logan's lap like he used to after long missions. Logan said nothing, just kept his hand on him, feeling the warmth and the slow, steady beat of a heart that had refused to forget. Then Brannick stood, walked across the station, and began to growl again. This time, it wasn't quiet. Logan followed his gaze. The floor, the dog had found something. He moved a mat aside with one paw, then began scratching. Logan grabbed the shovel and peeled up the old floorboard beneath. It came up in chunks, revealing a small, reinforced hatch beneath layers of rotted insulation. He pulled it open and found a steel case. Inside, a secondary drive, sleek, undamaged. It had a small label on it, classified Polaris Beta Channel. There was something deeper, another layer. Logan looked at Brannick. "You knew?" he said softly. The dog didn't move, but his tail just once tapped the floor. The fire cracked low as dusk settled around the ranger station, shadows drawing, long fingers across the worn wooden floor. Logan sat cross-legged near the stove, the second drive resting on the table beside him. Brannick lay curled up nearby, breathing slow but steady. His ears twitched every so often, alert to sounds Logan couldn't hear, but neither of them moved much anymore, not without purpose. A low growl. He turned slowly. Brannick, alive, standing at the far edge of the room, ribs heaving, coat ragged and matted with blood and dirt. His right flank was bandaged, roughly, with someone's torn shirt. His eyes met Logan's, and for a second, neither moved. Then Brannick took a step forward, just one. Logan dropped to a knee, heart in his throat. "It's me," he said softly. Brannick's head tilted, his ears perked. Another step. The growl faded. Then the tail twitched once. Logan didn't move. Let the dog come to him, and he did. Slow, shaky, but sure. By the time Brannick reached him, Logan could see it. The old wound, half healed, the old fire, still burning behind the eyes. He reached out. Brannick leaned into his hand, and for the first time since Logan's discharge, something in him came loose. He didn't say a word, didn't need to, but Brannick's body trembled as if trying to speak what he couldn't. That was when Logan noticed the small scar behind his ear. A surgical scar. Recent. Someone had opened up his brain. Someone had tried to change him. The silence between man and dog stretched long after the first touch. Logan kept his hand on Brannick's head, his fingers moving slowly through the thick fur, matting with dirt and dried blood. Brannick leaned against him, weight heavy, breathing shallow. The scar behind his ear pulsed faintly, stitched in crude lines. It wasn't healing right, but the look in his eyes, recognition, pain, and something else, stayed clear. Logan exhaled, breaking the stillness. "We're getting out of here, partner." Brannick's tail flicked once, but he didn't move. The dog's body was wrecked, worn down from nights alone, maybe weeks. Logan pulled his pack forward, found a water bottle, poured it slowly into a shallow tin lid. Brannick drank in short laps, chest rattling with each swallow. There was no telling how long he'd been here, or what they had done to him. Logan scanned. The bunker again with new eyes. The layout made more sense now. This hadn't just been a storage facility or outpost. It was a lab, off books, secret, buried deep enough to forget. The empty cages told a story no one wanted told, but the walls whispered it anyway. Scratches, claw marks, and the faint stink of old terror. Dogs had been here. Not one or two. Dozens. Brannick was the only one who got out. Logan wrapped his jacket around Brannick's torso, lifting him gently. The dog didn't resist, just groaned low in his throat. Logan looped the straps of his pack over one shoulder, slid the hard drive into a reinforced pouch, and started the climb out. The hatch above took both strength and leverage to force open again, the hinges groaning under the weight of years. The cold hit hard, harder than before. The wind carried a bite that made Logan's eyes water as he stepped into the grey daylight. They didn't speak, not with words. Brannick limped beside him, leaning slightly to one side. Logan adjusted pace accordingly, step for step. The bond was there, even if frayed. Somewhere between them, the memory of 1,000 patrols stitched each movement into instinct. They made it halfway down the ridge before Logan felt his legs begin to ache, lungs burning from the altitude. He glanced at Brannick, head low, still, moving. The cabin was days away on foot, maybe more. So Logan rerouted, down toward the abandoned ranger station. The second they crossed the clearing, Brannick slowed, then collapsed. Logan caught him before he hit the ground, lowering him into the soft brush behind the outpost. His breathing was uneven, labored. "Just hang on," Logan said, digging into the pack for field gear. He cleaned the wound with bottled iodine, rewrapped the makeshift dressing, then set up camp with whatever insulation he could find, old ranger blankets, a broken cot, and a thermal foil sheet. That night, Logan stayed awake with his rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the darkness. Brannick stirred in his sleep, whining, dreaming. Logan whispered his name. The whining stopped, but the eyes never opened. By morning, frost covered the walls of the station. Logan cooked what little food he had left, dehydrated beans and jerky, then chewed it in silence. Brannick lifted his head once, sniffed the air, but didn't eat. Instead, he stared at the doorway, then growled low, guttural. Logan rose slowly, rifle raised, no footsteps, no sound, but someone had been near. They left nothing behind, no footprints. A crumpled page, military printout scorched at the edges. The title, barely visible, Human Enhancement Division, Canine Integration Field Tests. His pulse quickened. Behind the station, tracks in the snow, old but still visible, led away. From the structure toward the tree line, not prints exactly, more like something dragging. Logan followed. He didn't get far before he heard the hum, an engine, faint, slow-moving. He dropped to one knee and watched from the shadows. A black van rolled into the clearing where the ranger station stood. No headlights, no license plate. It stopped. Two men climbed out, both dressed like contractors. Thick parkas, rifles slung over their shoulders, movements sharp. Trained. They didn't speak. One man swept the perimeter with a thermal scope while the other entered the station. Flashlights strobing inside. Logan pressed against a tree, heartbeat steady. Then a third figure emerged from the van, shorter, civilian, holding a tablet. "Still warm," the man said. "Residual prints within the last 72 hours. "He's close," one of the contractors replied. "Dog or Barrett?" The civilian shrugged. "Doesn't matter. They'll meet. That's what matters." The contractor spat on the snow. "You ask me. This was never about the dog." The other man stepped out of the station, holding the burned. Impage Logan had seen. "It's about what they remember." The civilian nodded once. Then he dropped the tablet. It shattered. The three of them reloaded and vanished into the van. No words, no urgency. They didn't know how close they'd come. Logan stayed in place until long after the engine faded. Then he emerged from the trees and stepped into the space where they'd stood. He looked down at the shattered tablet and saw, faint and blinking, on the screen, one last signal still trying to transmit. Subject Brannick, field exposure deviation flagged. He stared at the message until the screen finally blinked out. Whatever was happening, it wasn't about loyalty. It wasn't even about control. It was about memory. The mountain ridge marked on the map rose like a broken spine against the dark sky. Logan made the climb slowly, knees aching, hands scraped raw. Snow had turned to ice near the summit, making every step a risk, but there was no turning back. He could feel it in his gut. Something waited up there. Not a person, a truth. By mid-morning, he reached the top. The wind howled against the crags, cutting through his coat and stinging his face. And there it was, just like the satellite photo. The entrance, a steel hatch flush with the rock, barely visible unless you knew where to look. A keypad had once guarded it, now rusted through, wires gutted and hanging like entrails. A blast mark marred the stone nearby. Someone had forced it open before. Logan gripped the handle, gave it a pull. It groaned open with effort. The darkness inside wasn't just the absence of light. It felt layered, old and cold. He clicked on his flashlight and stepped in, rifle ready. The air inside. The bunker was stale, metallic. The temperature dropped 5 degrees instantly. Dust motes shimmered in the beam of his light. He moved room by room, storage bays long emptied, desks overturned, lockers pried open, faded signs hung on peeling paint. Personnel restricted, clearance Polaris, and behavioral testing wing. Polaris. That name had appeared on Brannick's file once. Only once, redacted immediately. Logan's boots echoed down a hallway littered with shattered glass and old cables. One door had been welded shut, then later cut open from the outside. Beyond it, a narrow chamber with metal walls, surgical lights above and cages, dozens of them. Open, bent, scratch marks on the floors. Not from rodents, from claws. One cage still held a shredded military vest, small, canine-sized. The tag read, K917B, no name. On the far wall, a whiteboard yellowed with time, memory sequencing, phase 4. Beneath it, files, scorched, half-torn and stamped with military seals. Logan picked one up, careful not to breathe in the mold. The words were fragmented. Subjects show advanced recognition patterns. The synaptic mapping protocol may overwrite loyalty functions. Field stability compromised after reintegration. At the back of the room, a terminal lay smashed, but next to it, a hard drive. Tucked beneath a loose panel in the geyser, floor, black, metal-cased, still intact. Logan reached for it, and that's when he heard it. The edges dented, but unmistakable. K9, Brannick, Class 4 clearance. Below it, a photograph, a satellite image, grainy but clear enough for someone who knew what to look for. A bunker, buried into the northern hills, marked only by a faint heat signature and a long metal hatch. Coordinates scrawled in pen on the back. The photo was dated 3 days ago. Logan felt his throat close. There was no note, no warning, just those 2 items, placed like a threat or a plea, or maybe both. He picked up the tag and held it in his palm. It was cold. He closed his hand around it and felt the weight of it pull something loose in his chest. Guilt, fury, that tight knot of helplessness he hadn't felt since the first time he lost a man on a mission. Someone wanted him to see. That photo. Someone knew Brannick was alive. He went to the basement, pulled the false panel in the wall. Inside, his service gear untouched until now. He laid it all out on the concrete floor. Sidearm, tactical vest, field radio, and a battered, dust-covered pack marked Barrett 02 Echo. He loaded everything. In silence, by nightfall, Logan was on the move. He left no note, no signs of departure, just locked the front door behind him and vanished into the forest. The stars above seemed clearer than they had in weeks. The kind of sky you only noticed when you were preparing for something you might not come back from. 3 miles east, near a dried riverbed, he buried the tag under a cairn of stones. If anyone ever came looking, they'd find it. A marker. A beginning. Hours passed as he moved north, past logging roads and abandoned fire towers. The further he got, the more alive he felt. Something had reawakened, not the soldier. That part had never fully died. But something else, something personal. He wasn't hunting an enemy. He was chasing a friend. Meanwhile, miles away in a county, Storage room. A technician flipped through incoming footage flagged for wildlife tracking. One frame made him stop. He zoomed in. A dog, lean, scarred, lying half-conscious near an abandoned station, muzzle caked with blood, one ear torn. But what caught his attention was the collar, military issue, and it was missing a tag. He marked the file, tagged it anomaly, but before he could log the entry, the power flickered, the screen glitched, and the file was gone. Deleted. Not by him. Logan pressed deeper into the wilderness, unaware he was now being followed. But not by men, by eyes that had been watching him long before he even knew Brannick was missing. The storm came without warning, not thunder or lightning, but the kind of cold that creeps under your skin before you even know it's there. Logan had crossed into the northern tree line by then, moving along forgotten ranger trails and logging paths that hadn't been walked in years. The photograph's coordinates burned in the back of his mind, a single fixed point dragging him, and deeper into the wilderness. The satellite image had marked something, but it didn't say why. By his third day on foot, his boots were soaked and his knuckles bruised from climbing rocks and pushing through tangled underbrush. He slept in bursts, 30 minutes at a time. His nights were spent huddled beneath emergency blankets, rifle in hand, the stars overhead cold and silent. There was no road anymore, just the sound of wind and distant creek water, and somewhere out there, Brannick. Alive, maybe. Hunted, definitely. He stopped when he found the old ranger station. The roof had partially collapsed, ivy clawing through what used to be window frames. The door was unhinged. Inside, animal droppings, scattered tin cans, torn maps pinned to a faded corkboard. It smelled of rot and coal dust, but Logan wasn't looking for shelter. He was looking for signs of movement, and he found them. Near the rear wall, a panel had been forced open, not recently, but not years ago either. Inside, an old metal locker, its hinges rusted, sat slightly ajar. Logan knelt. Inside, a coil of discarded radio wire, dried blood. On the frame, and something stranger, an old Cold War-era map, marked in red ink, circles drawn around hilltops and canyons. One circled twice, then underlined. Beside the map, a frayed patch of black fur, short, coarse. Logan closed his eyes. Brannick had been here. He traced the circle on the map with a gloved finger. A ridge northwest of the station. Then he noticed something tucked into the corner of the locker, staring at the leash coiled on the counter. It still smelled like Brannick, leather, dust, and something warm. And then, as the clock ticked past midnight, the nightmares returned. But this time, they weren't about IEDs or ambushes in Kandahar. This time, they were about back doors and black vans, and the sound of paws being dragged across concrete. The truck barreled down a winding dirt road, bordered by thick pine. It was unmarked, windowless, and carried no insignia. Just dust and silence. Brannick lay chained in the back, his legs trembling beneath him, not from fear, but instinct. Something was wrong. The men inside didn't wear standard military uniforms. Their boots were too clean. Their words were clipped, private contractor precise. He hadn't eaten since yesterday. The sedative had worn off, but a dull ache still crawled. Under his ribs, the air was sharp with chemicals, something sterilized, unnatural. He watched them through the cage slats. One sat on a crate, arms crossed, tapping a syringe against his thigh. "You sure this one's not tagged?" the man asked. "No tracker," the driver replied. "They pulled it with the rest of his file. High clearance case. Just dump him after the shot." Brannick's ears twitched. His breathing slowed. He knew timing. He knew waiting. When the truck veered off the main road and rattled down a narrow clearing, he braced. The wheels struck something hard, throwing the back compartment into chaos. The man with the syringe lost balance, slamming against the wall. Brannick surged forward, his jaws clamped on the steel mesh, twisting. Once, twice, then a snap. The bolt cracked. The crate swung open, and Brannick launched. The handler screamed. Brannick's teeth found his forearm, shredding through muscle before the man could draw his sidearm. Blood sprayed across the walls. The other yelled, scrambling to hit the emergency stop, but Brannick was already at the front. He lunged, jaws crushing into the driver's shoulder. The truck swerved, hit a tree, and skidded sideways into a ditch. Crash threw Brannick against the dashboard. Dazed, he stumbled through shattered glass, paws slick with blood. His or theirs, he didn't know. He bolted through the open side door and vanished into the tree line before any of them could react. Gunshots cracked behind him. He didn't stop. Branches tore at his coat. Rocks dug into open wounds. But he kept running. Hours passed. The scent of oil and antiseptic faded, replaced by pine, dirt, and cold air. He limped, dragging a rear leg, until his body gave out beneath a rock outcropping. He collapsed, breath shallow, chest rising in shallow pools. Every instinct told him to stay alert, to stay hidden. But exhaustion won. He slept under the stars, bleeding onto the earth. The next day, hunters found the wreck. They reported the crash, said there was blood but no bodies. The truck had been abandoned, its tires half buried in mud. The cargo bay was empty. When the sheriff arrived, the contractors were gone. No paperwork, no VIN number on the frame, just blood, claw marks, and a broken syringe in the dirt. Brannick moved by night. He stole from trash bins behind diners, skirted fences, and crossed rivers to avoid heat trails. But the wound on his side festered. He licked it raw, the pain climbing into his spine like fire. Coyotes followed at a distance, watching, waiting. On the fourth night, he collapsed again near a river bend. A fisherman saw him in the early morning mist, just a silhouette of fur and ribs and a dull metal tag hanging from a chewed collar. The man stepped close, thinking it was a wild stray. Then he saw the eyes that had seen war. He reached for his phone, whispering to no one. "I think I found something. Military. A dog. He's not normal." The call never reached the authorities. By the time help arrived, Brannick had vanished again, leaving only a trail of blood across the rocks and a single item behind, a military tag. It read, K9, Brannick, Class 4 clearance. The snow came early that year. Thick, grey clouds rolled over the Nevada foothills, blanketing the forest floor in a silence that seemed deeper than usual. The first to see the tracks was a hiker named Marla, early 30s, alone and careful, following the trail she had walked every winter since college. But this time, something followed her. She felt it before she saw it. Just a shadow between trees, a weight in the air. At first, she thought it was a cougar. Then she found the paw prints, deep, large, deliberate, canine, but heavier than any wolf she'd ever seen. What unsettled her most wasn't the size, it was the blood. Drops, fresh and dark, left behind like breadcrumbs. She followed them until the riverbank, where something gleamed near the water. A tag, cold and worn. She picked it up with a gloved hand and squinted at the letters etched into the metal. K9, Brannick, Class 4 clearance. She turned around fast, half expecting something to be behind her, but there was only wind and snow. 2 days later, word of the dog reached the local ranger station. A few called it urban legend. A military ghost dog, some said. Seen limping through the trees, ears alert, always vanishing before anyone got close. Campers heard growling outside tents. Hunters swore something smart was watching them, something that didn't make mistakes. Wildlife cameras caught glimpses, always blurry, a shape too sharp for a wolf, too focused for a stray. More than once, cabins were found with food missing and doors slightly ajar, tracks in the snow. Never a sound. One camera finally caught a clear image. The shot was infrared, just a heat map until someone zoomed in. The outline of a Belgian Malinois, one shoulder hunched, a line of fresh scars cutting along his ribs. His eyes glowed in the dark like two coals. But it wasn't just the dog that concerned the ranger who reviewed the footage. It was what was attached to his collar, a listening device, burned out, cut wires dangling from where a transmitter had been torn clean off. Weeks passed. Snow deepened. Locals started calling him the Ghost. The newspapers ignored it, but a few ex-military in town didn't. One of them, a retired recon pilot named Grant, kept tabs. When he saw the photo, he muttered, "That's a working dog, not feral. He's trained." He sent the image to an old friend in Utah, who passed it to a man in Washington. Somewhere along the chain, the image triggered a ping, unregistered canine unit active, clearance redacted, and from there, the wrong kind of eyes turned toward Nevada. Meanwhile, Brannick fought to stay alive. He hadn't eaten properly in days. His body moved like a machine grinding without oil, but his mind remained sharp. He avoided traps, circled around trail cams, traveled only at night, and still the scent of copper followed him. Infection in his leg had spread, and every mile felt heavier. He dug into the side of a hill and lay there, shivering beneath brush and snow. Somewhere deep inside, the part of him that was more than animal, the part they had trained, the part that remembered Logan's voice, fought to stay awake. Dreams came in flashes, bomb blasts, rotor blades, Logan's hand on his head. The sound of a gunshot too close, the weight of something soft, a medic's coat soaked in blood, then a light, footsteps, crunching snow. He stirred. Low growl, but his body didn't rise, too weak. A silhouette leaned down, no uniform, no gloves, just wide eyes and the shape of a winter coat too big for its owner. "Hey there, boy," the voice said, trembling. "What happened to you?" Brannick didn't bite, couldn't. He just looked at the girl with tired eyes, his breath misting through cracked lips. She placed a small glove over his paw. "I won't hurt you," she whispered. "I promise." But somewhere behind her, deeper in the woods, another shape watched. And it wasn't human. The cabin was tucked deep into the Sierra foothills, far enough from town to stay quiet, close enough to civilization to still get a newspaper. Twice a week. Logan Barrett had chosen it for the silence, for the way the wind moved through the trees without judgment. The place had become his sanctuary after the discharge, a safe zone for a man with too much history and nowhere left to put it. He was chopping wood when the envelope came. No return address, no postmark, just a thick manila envelope wedged into the crack of his front door while he'd been out by the creek. He paused, axe in hand, eyes scanning the perimeter. The forest answered with stillness. No tire tracks in the gravel. No footprints in the snow, just the envelope. He brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it for a while. Long enough for the coffee to go cold. Then he opened it. First, the tag. His breath caught. The one he'd clipped to Brannick's collar himself, months before everything went to hell. Scratched, dirt-caked. He sipped slowly from his last bottle of Old Crow, the cheap bourbon he'd kept locked away since Mosul. Brannick lay at his feet, head resting on his paws. But his eyes never closed. The sound of tires crunching gravel outside made Logan's pulse hitch. No one was supposed to be arriving at this hour, and yet a black SUV eased past the gates without headlights. No license plates, no insignias, just 3 men inside. Brannick stood before Logan even moved, the hair on his neck rising. That low, deadly growl again. Logan didn't say a word. He rose slow, took one last look around the lounge, then walked back toward the barracks with the dog at his side, never once turning his back on the glass. The calm had finally cracked. By morning, the sun rose over Fort Copperstone like it always had, bright, indifferent, and merciless. Logan Barrett shaved in silence, no music, no chatter from the hallway. The entire base felt, evacuated, and not just of bodies, but of its soul. Brannick paced beside the door, unsettled, refusing to eat, his instincts louder than any siren. The knock came at 0700 sharp, 3 quick raps, regulation style but hollow. Logan opened it to find Captain Doyle from the Office of Personnel Review, flanked by 2 MPs. The younger one on the left wouldn't meet his eyes. The one on the right rested his hand a little too naturally on his sidearm. "Captain Barrett," Doyle said, unfolding a set of crisp papers. Effective immediately, you are hereby discharged under Article 117, gross insubordination and unauthorized access to restricted documents. You are ordered to vacate Fort Copperstone within 2 hours. Logan didn't speak. His eyes dropped to the papers. His name was correct. The signature was real. The accusations, however, were fabricated. "This is a mistake," he said evenly, without looking up. "Appeals can be filed through civilian channels," Doyle replied, expression unreadable. "But as of now, your access is revoked. Your badge, sidearm, and any electronic credentials must be surrendered." "You can't do this," Logan said, his voice low. "We already did," Doyle replied. "You'll be escorted off base. Your personal effects have been gathered." As Logan reached for Brannick's leash, Doyle held up a second document. "The K9 unit has been reassigned. Brannick is to be relocated to Fort DuPont for re-evaluation and possible decommissioning. Effective immediately." Logan's hand froze mid-air. "He's not property. He's a decorated service dog with over 12 ops under his belt. He's mine." Doyle didn't even blink. "He belongs to the Department of Defense." Brannick sat beside Logan, ears perked, sensing the tension. The MPs took a step forward. Logan dropped the leash. A younger handler stepped into view. "We'll take it from here, sir," he said, reaching for Brannick's collar. Brannick snarled, not a bark, not a warning, a guttural, primal sound from deep inside him, the kind of sound that made soldiers freeze in sandstorms. "Stand down." Logan snapped, not at Brannick, but at the MPs who were reaching for tasers. The dog didn't bite, but didn't yield either. It took 5 full minutes, 3 handlers, and a sedative dart to finally subdue him. When Brannick was loaded into the back of the transport van, his eyes never left Logan's. His stare wasn't one of confusion. It was betrayal. Logan stood in the dust, fists clenched so hard his palms bled from his own nails. The convoy rolled away. No markings, no destination on file. It took a left turn at the edge of the base and disappeared into the desert. As the MPs guided Logan toward the exit, Doyle followed behind, like a man tying up loose ends. Logan turned once, looking over his shoulder at the only place he'd ever called home in uniform. "Who gave the order?" he asked. Doyle didn't answer. By noon, Logan was dropped off outside the base perimeter with a duffel bag, a stripped-out phone, and the clothes on his back. No ride, no pension confirmation, no chance to say goodbye. The sky above was endless and empty. He walked for miles before anyone picked him up. An old rancher heading east gave him a ride without questions. Logan kept his gaze on the side mirror, watching the road behind them like it could still claw him back in. When he finally arrived at his cabin, the silence was different than it had ever been. Not peaceful, not remote, just wrong. He sat at his kitchen table long after dark.